There we go. Welcome to Baseball and Coffee, episode 21, with Tino and Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
Not too much. How are you tonight?
I'm good, man. Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening here in I'm in Walla Walla, Washington. Aaron is in somewhere random, Pennsylvania.
It's a big state. I could be anywhere, honestly.
Tonight we're gonna do some player deep dives and little open forum chatter. I've got a couple of questions that Aaron doesn't know are coming for him before open forum, but thought we would catch up and spend about an hour just kind of diving a little bit deeper into a couple players. You got any coffee stories for us?
I do. I wanted to tell you, I have a honey processed coffee tonight, and recently I know that you had a Walla Walla roastery coffee that was honey processed, and you'd shared it's been 3 or 4 episodes ago about it and your experience with it, and we talked a little bit about the marketing aspect of that particular processing method and how it showed up in the cup. And so yeah, I just wanted to share. I'll report back on how it was. I have not had it yet, but I also wanted to share in lieu of that and related to that story, one of the partners, one of the roasters who usually brews coffee for the team, he's just gotten a habit, like he'll tell me like what he's going to brew, and it's just kind of become this routine. And whenever he's not there, usually I'll make the coffee because everyone freaks out, like, oh, is Joel not here? Are we not going to have coffee? And so I kind of like sub for him. But it's kind of become this routine. And I just, we talk a lot about coffee and connection and routine. And I've just come to really enjoy that. He'll always stop by my desk in the office and say like, hey, I started the coffee, and he'll tell me what we're having. And I always stop around 1 a.m. and get my first cup, and he always makes sure it's brewed. So last night he's like, hey, I have a honey process we're going to try. So anyway, nice. I want to share that. It makes you shared your work coffee story, and I was thinking about, I need to share this. This is right on by for what we talk about.
Where's it from? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I just know that it's a honey processed coffee. So I will share back 100%.
Awesome. I assume probably Central American.
Probably, yes.
Would be my guess.
Yeah.
FYI, your player AJ Pollock is pinch running at second with the extra inning rule.
Yeah,
by the way, the worst rule of all time. I can't stand it.
It is. I absolutely hate it. Yeah, still a cheapo run here.
Right. So my coffee thought or coffee story is, I'd say my favorite espresso based drink is an Italiano, and we talked a little bit about the Italiano in the past, but I always get funny looks for it because either A, people don't know what an Italiano is, or B, it's much more espresso heavy than what I think people are used to consuming. For me, it's either 2 shots of espresso and like equal amounts espresso and hot water. It's either 2 shots and a couple of ounces of hot water, or sometimes I'll get like a 4-shot, 6 or 8 ounce Americano, which is essentially a turbocharged Italiano. But I guess my question, or what's interesting to me is I want to taste the espresso, and I'm not trying to lose it in milk and vanilla, right? I want to taste it. I want to understand it. I want to get to know it. And Abreu just doubled. There's your run. But I get funny looks for it. And at this point, now that I go to the roastery pretty often, it's not as big of a deal. But my question is, why do people do that? So we were trained through our work experience to basically accept any coffee order as normal, whether it was totally wild or not, and operate as if you've seen that drink, 10,000 times, and you just make it and you move on. But I guess I'm sensitive to the fact that people think my order is funny.
Yeah, it's it's at Starbucks. I usually order my Americano with light water instead of saying Italiano. Yeah, and I can't tell you how many times I get extra water, regular water, because people don't understand. I also once in a while treat myself to a chai, and I'll get extra water on that because I like it to be spicier and less like creamier. But yeah, I'm always messing with the water, and yeah, you're right, it does create a little bit of confusion. But But and I always just tell them if they kind of give me a quick look, I'm like, I just want the coffee to be stronger. And they're like,
Exactly.
oh, okay, right, I
Right.
got it. I'm with you now. I know what you want now. And like
Right.
that kind of helps them like grasp what I want.
Right. But it's a way to taste the espresso without drinking like a plain, a shot of espresso. I know you're looking at Luis Roberts RBI single.
You're actually a little ahead of me. So I like everything you
So
tell me.
my
I'm
bad.
like,
My
yeah,
bad.
right through the gap, right through the hole there.
But yeah, I guess over time, I've wanted to understand and get to know coffee better and be more connected to it. And I think the more non-coffee you add to coffee, the less you understand what the coffee actually tastes like. And
Oh, for
there's no
sure.
knock against that, right? If that's your coffee experience, that's great. For me, I want to know what it tastes like, but I don't know that I want to do shots of espresso, over and over again. So anyways, the Italiano is really awesome. And if you haven't tried it and you're listening, give it a try. But it's definitely a way to get to still be able to sip something and get to know the espresso that's been pulled.
Yep.
Cool. So we're going to do each do a pitcher and a hitter deep dive today. You're first up with your pitchers. I'm super interested in who you've chosen and why.
Yeah. So I actually want to talk about relievers.
Sure.
Shocking. And I have two pairs of relievers. So in the news this week, there's been a couple. Ryan Helsley had his first save on Sunday. We talked a little bit about that. And he has not had another save opportunity. And then Gallegos has been used as the conventional closer. And I just wanted to see, in the fantasy community, we talk a lot about skills of a role and, trying to identify the next reliever or next closer and how that's important in our game. So I just want to take a real, just kind of pitching centric look at those two relievers, Gallegos and Helsley, from a skills perspective and also from a sabermetric perspective, and see like how they compare. And then we know how they're being used. I mean, Gallegos is the primary closer, and as much as I pushed back in the preseason on the idea he was not going to be used that way, which I was wrong to this point. And being transparent, I roster Helsley, and so I'm impacted by how he's used in terms of my team's results as well. So I have some skin in the game. So yeah, just interesting to look at. So Gallegos, his stuff plus is 116 currently through 8 appearances, or Helsley's is 126 through 7.
Sure.
Location plus, Gallegos is 103, Helsley is 105, pretty equal. And then pitching plus, Gallegos is an even 100.7. So basically league average. Low pitching plus takes into account both movement, velocity, and location all into one, as well as splits. And then Helsley's pitching plus is 110. So from a pitch analysis standpoint, Helsley has a little bit of an edge. And then I also wanted to look at some different things than I normally look at. So I looked at win probability added, which is something that Fangraphs tracks, looking at leverage, what time they came in the game, and impact on the teams. I mean, if you think about what we're trying to do here is figure out what relievers are going to have the opportunity to close the game, which opportunities how are their managers going to use them when the game is on the line. So the win probability added that as a way to kind of look and see like who is doing that the best. So right now, Gallegos' WPA is 0.06, so 0.6 of a point, and Helsley's is 0.53. So he's almost been half a win player so far. K minus BB, one of our favorite stats here on the pod. Gallegos is 7-2, 7 Ks, 2 walks. Helsley's is 20-0, 20 Ks, no walks. And then the Sierra, Gallegos is a 3.72, which is respectable, and Helsley's is negative 0.5. So I don't know how you get a negative Sierra. I think that just points to the vagaries of the system. So yeah, it's, obviously Helsley's off to a great start. It's going to be some regression. He's really doing some special things, and that was worth highlighting. And if you want me to, I can also did Pagan and Duran, which kind of sounds cool together, Pagan and Duran. But that's another one that was fresh on my mind because Pagan has had a couple really messy saves. So I'll go over that real quick, and then I'll let you react. So same exercise. So as we talked about, Pagan is primarily the closer right now. Duran has had a few opportunities to close. He actually closed today. He had a 2-inning save. And it's
electric, by the way. with
What's
that.
that?
He was electric in that save, by the way.
Yeah, he really was. So stuff plus wise, they're actually tied. Emilio and Duran both have a 119 stuff. However, location plus Emilio, as we see, has command problems, and that comes through in the model. 87 location plus, whereas Duran's a 1057. Pitching plus Pagan is 95.9, and Duran comes out at a 108.6. Win probability added, Pagan is 0.16, so 16 tenths. And then Duran is 0.42, so just short of half a win. K minus BB, 11 to 9 for Pagan, 19 to 2 for Duran. And then Sierra, 5.21 for Pagan, 1.16 for Johan Duran. So yeah, I just want to take a deeper look about, again, both Pagan and Gallegos have the jobs, and these two guys are kind of clipping at their heels. We can see you watch these Duran and Helsley pitch, you see it. And I wanted to take a closer look at what do some of the numbers say to support their performance, since they passed the eye test. So we'll see. I love having both pitchers. I would not want to have Pagan. I would definitely roster Gallegos if I had the opportunity. I would not want Pagan, despite the fact that he has the job, because of just a bit impending ratio risk. But I'm happy to have both because we have holds. Yeah.
So how did you? So lots of thoughts.
Yeah.
The first thought is, how do you reconcile the fact that basically what you're saying is Helsley and Duran are better pitchers than the guys that they're pitching in front of, right? So fantasy wise, right, we know that the skills are there. We know that both of those guys throw basically 103 miles an hour and are lights out, and their organizations are either hesitant to put them in the closer role because they're younger, or are utilizing them in higher leverage situations, the way that we've always wanted bullpens to operate. I think it's the latter, and that they understand how talented these pitchers are, and they're just trying to put them in the role that's going to most help them win the game. But fantasy wise, what happens? So we are in Holds league. So both Duran and Helsley carry great value. But what about TGFBI, right? Where Holds isn't a category. What do you do with those pitchers in that situation? I assume you keep them on your roster, and they're probably like your last pitcher that you're going to put into your lineup to help ratios. And you hope and pray that they end up as the closer eventually. But I guess it's just hard to, sometimes when you roster the pitcher who's better, it's hard to reconcile the fact that they're not the closer and you don't get saves from them. Whereas two of my three closers in our league are Mark Melanson and David Robertson, neither of whom have very good stuff, but are racking up saves, right? We should also say that when you refer to stuff plus and location plus and pitching plus, that those are metrics that you get from the Atlantic, I always call it the Athletic, and Sarah's correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm a subscriber to the Athletic. Developed the model with Max Bay. He used to work with the Astros, and he makes the data available to subscribers.
I also subscribe. I think it's fascinating information. And a way I'd love to build my own model, but every time I think about building my own model, I think, well, someone else has already done a really great job with it. Why do I need to do it too? It'll be really interesting. I don't think Pagan is the long-term solution in Minnesota. They've kind of rifled through some closers over the past couple of years, and it'll be interesting to see if Duran settles in that role. For fantasy purposes and for you, I'd like to see that happen. I also think for the Twins purposes, it's probably better if they keep him doing what he's doing, which is pitching in incredibly high leverage roles.
Yeah, well, there's also a workload element too. I think what's interesting and fun to talk about too, there's subtlety to this conversation. There's, as you said, there's age, there's health risk, there's usage, there's, the ability to use these guys at different times in the game, because one of the elements, I'm watching Liam Hendricks try to close out for the White Sox. He's pitched like four out of the last 5 days. So part of being a closer is that kind of resilience. And do the Twins and the Cardinals respectively feel comfortable using Helsley and Duran that way? Probably not. And that's an element as well. And the ironic thing for me as well with Duran is I was kind of hoping to get a Jonathan Loaisiga type 2021 Jonathan Loaisiga type player when I drafted him. I had him on my sheet next to Spencer Strider, and I was literally like flipping a coin,
Right.
hoping to get that guy who was going to come in the middle of the game and pitch multiple innings and be someone who could get wins, holds, and strikeouts. Strider has turned out to be that thus far and might end up in the rotation, whereas Duran is drifting the other way. He's drifting towards the end of the game.
Right.
So yeah, and that's part of our builds too, is we kind of project how we think these guys are going to be used, but ultimately their teams are going to, based on how their roster takes shape, we have to be able to be nimble and adjust as well.
Right.
And Brandon and I have ongoing conversations about his interest in, he's potentially wants to acquire Duran, and I'm really interested in Strider because I want the multiple innings, but as Duran potentially moves towards the ninth, I question that.
Right.
But I also think, do I have enough saves? And because if Strider goes to the rotation and has more innings, is that not more valuable?
Right. Well, I think that was a question I was going to ask is Duran in a picking up, say he has 15 saves and 10 holds and 100 strikeouts in 65 innings versus Strider as a back end rotation guy who's racking up strikeouts, but probably if he goes into the rotation, I would assume his whip would increase slightly. Who's more valuable, right? I would argue that Duran, just based on those stats alone, is much more valuable because the Strider profile is one you can replace much easier. I'd also say that because they both have SPRP designation, that Duran is even that much more valuable because you can put him in a starting role and still start the 5 requisite relievers. So I would much rather a pitcher like that gravitate towards the back end of the game as opposed to becoming a starter, because once he becomes a starter, he's kind of any other starter, right? Unless he's an ace.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation last week about Triston Mckenzie. And
right now, bettingly.
He is. And I was really fascinated with what I found. I don't know if you dove into Mckenzie at all.
I didn't, because I knew you were.
So he's 24 years old. He's 6'5" and like $110 soaking wet. He's arbitration eligible in 24, so the Indians control him basically for the next 5 years. Fangraphs has his pitches rated as his fastball's a 50, future 50, slider is 55, future 55, curveball 55, future 55, changeup 45, future 50, command is 50, future 60, and he's a future value 50. He was drafted 42nd overall in 2015 draft, signed for $2.3 million. He was a Vanderbilt commit. But like I said, fascinating profile. So Blanky doesn't throw very hard. His average velocity on his fastball is around 92. In 2021, it was 92.1. In 2000, so far this year, it's 92.4, and he throws it over 60% of the time. So why does he throw a 92 mile an hour fastball over 60% of the time? What I found is, and with great results, what I found is that he has elite extension and he has elite vertical movement. So if you think about it, his extension is 6 feet 9 inches. Number one in fastball extension is Logan Gilbert at 7 feet 4 inches. But if you think about it, if you're releasing the ball closer to the plate, right? And he has 12.5 inches of vertical movement, which is 17% above league average. not only is he releasing the fastball closer to the plate, but the fastball from that point in time until it hits the mitt has greater ride or vertical movement than your average pitch. So it's a pitch that's incredibly effective up in the zone. What is that? Is that you or me?
That's you.
Always. A pitch that's incredibly effective up in the zone, right? So last year, batters hit 227 against his fastball with the 259 xBA, and it had a 465 slug versus a 472 X slug. This year, hitters are hitting 204 against the fastball. xBA is 254. And the slug is 286. Now the X slug is 456, but still, you don't see fastballs with that type of average and slug very often. Usually the fastball is the pitch that's getting hit the bat or getting hit more by the hitter. So from what I can see, it's a pretty elite fastball. So far this year, he has a -2 run value on the fastball. But it looks like, to me, it looks like an elite pitch. His curveball is about an 80-mile-an-hour pitch. He throws it about 18% of the time. He throws a slider about 16% of the time. The curveball has less than average vertical and horizontal movement, but appears to be an incredibly effective pitch. Wasn't able to find anything about tunneling or if he's throwing it from the same slot as the fastball, but batters are hitting 125 and slugging 125 against the fastball this year.
The curveball, you mean?
What's that?
The curveball, you mean?
Oh, the curveball, yeah, sorry.
Well, I wonder, I mean, my recollection of his motion, he's pretty over the top.
Very much
so. I think off that four seam with good ride, if he has a 12-6 curveball changing that eye level, that's probably, I can deduce that's why it's such an effective pitch.
Right. It makes me think of Troy Percival. That's why Percival threw a fastball and a big 12-6 curveball, and it was exactly the same idea. So a curveball has been a really effective pitch. The slider is less so. Batters are slugging 556 against the slider this year, and they're hitting 278. What's interesting about the slider is, and it was a very effective pitch last year. They hit 132 against the slider with a 289 slug. What's interesting is he added 1.5 miles an hour to the slider this year, and he's added more vertical and horizontal movement. So he essentially increased the velocity and the movement on the pitch, but it's less effective this year. My assumption is that that's it's because of its relationship to the curveball and the fastball. And that's why it's been less effective, even though it's a more, I guess, demonstrative pitch. So from a pitch standpoint and a pitch shape standpoint, and the average and slug that I just described, you would assume that Triston Mckenzie is pretty incredible pitcher, right? Or on his way to really great things. Now, the other side, if I was making an argument, here'd be the rebuttal. His zone percentage in 2021 was 45.3%, and his zone percentage this year is 53.4%. So he's throwing more pitches in the zone this year versus last year. But he's getting, so his zone swing is the same, but zone contact, each of the last 3 years. So he pitched in 20, 21, and 22. Zone contact in 20 was 77.4%. Now this year, it's all the way up to 84.4%. So what does that say? To me, that says that his pitches that batters are seeing or able to hit his pitches better, 10% better in the zone this year versus 2 years ago. So there's something that they're either recognizing, whether it's patterns or being able to see the pitch better now more than ever. His chase rate is way up. So in 2020, his chase rate was 22.6%. In 21, it went up to 30.7%. Or excuse me, it's reversed. In 2020, it was 32.8%. This year, so far, it's 22.6%. So his chase rate is down over 10% this year versus 2 years ago. And then his first pitch strike percentage is also down each year. So again, what does all that say to me? it says that batters are recognizing his pitches more. He's in the zone a little bit more, but he's getting them to chase a little bit less. So those things say to me that he should be a little bit less effective as a pitcher. And it's happening as a slow regression from 2020 until now. His swinging strike rate has gone down by, 2.9% this year versus last. So 12.6% last year to 9.7 this year. And his called strike plus swinging strike has also been going down since 2020. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher at 48% fly balls over the last 2 years. He's got a high launch angle. So as a fly ball pitcher, 20 plus degrees last year in this. The one thing he's doing this year that's different, that is making him more effective from a stats standpoint, is that his walk rate, he's vastly reduced his walk rate from 11.7% last year to 7.4 this year. So he's got a K rate that's decreasing, right? Batters are seeing him better, I think, and hitting him better. But because he's reduced his walks, his I guess fantasy results look better than they ever have. A couple other alarming things. He has a pretty high average exit velocity, hard hit rate, barrel rate. They're all three are below average Major League Baseball, and he's 15th percentile in chase rate. So what does all this mean? 23.1 innings is what I'm basing this on, which isn't much. He's got a 2.70 ERA. His xFIP is close to 4 at 3.90. He's a hard one for me to understand because, again, he's got an elite fastball with elite extension. But when I dig deeper into the tools, if it wasn't the Indians, he would be a sell high for me. I think he's a major league 3 or 4 and not a 1 or 2, and he's a fantasy 4, 5, or 6, kind of a back end fantasy rotation starter. The reason I bring up the Indians is they're so smart with pitching that he has enough deception in his delivery and enough movement on his fastball and results on his breaking pitches to think that the Indians are, 10 steps ahead of baseball and coffee and are able to, they'll be able to tinker with his profile and get results from him. But he's not, I do not believe he's on the ascension, and I don't believe that he's going to continue to get better over the next couple of years, despite the fact that he's 24 years old. So
you took one of my my questions from me, which was if he didn't play for the Guardians, how would we view him differently?
Sorry, I said Indians. My bad.
It's okay. But yeah, because I'm with you on him. Yeah, and that was going to be one of my questions. And from a dynasty perspective, how would you view him and how would you value him? Looking at his start today, he's currently pitching against the Blue Jays. He's held them to 2 runs, but a lot of the results point to the same things that you just outlined. Mm-hmm. He has 11 swings and misses in 5 innings, but he's given up 8 hard hit balls.
Right.
I'm trying to see if he has any walks today. I do like to see the improved command. And I think that's a positive. He has 2 walks today, 4 hits, 2 walks. And that's kind of where he was his last start as well. And I agree with you. I think he's a solid 3-4 in the rotation for the Guardians. And I think from a fantasy perspective, I would value him, someone at the 5-6, spot, who I could rely on for, 5 quality innings most times out. He plays in the AL Central. So it's pretty decent landing spot in terms of ballparks and team mix. There wouldn't be too many times where I feel like I had to sit him or wouldn't be comfortable starting him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, not super exciting, but a solid young pitcher.
Mm-hmm. I think there's how do I say this? At least for me, when I see a young, like kind of lanky, interesting pitcher that gets, his curveball is really impressive looking. I know that I said that the movement is slightly below average, but it looks, because it's a 12-6 curveball, it looks really fun. And, you can dream on that profile. And then I also think it's natural to look at him and, maybe this is just me stereotyping, but I always think, I see young, skinny African-American starting pitcher and you want it to be Dwight Gooden. That's just from my generation, right? Or our generation. And he's not that. He's much more of a deception and kind of finesse pitcher when you look at his velocity. But yeah, he's, to me, like, the end results that he gets are pretty fungible. It's not someone that I would be willing to give up draft capital or players that I value in the future for. I think he's the type of player that you can not find on the waiver wire, but certainly acquire at a decent cost. And if it's a different name, I think it's going to be a lot cheaper than Triston Mckenzie, because there still are people who are dreaming on his potential. So let's take a quick break here, and we'll come back with our hitter deep dives and a couple of random questions, and then we will open some of these.
Nice. Thank you.
And we're back. Aaron, who's your hitter?
My hitter is Royce Lewis. We haven't talked a lot about prospects since the beginning of the season. We talked a lot about him in the preseason ranks. Royce is a player that is kind of polarizing as he came up through the minors. It had a really turbulent last couple of years. He got the call this week, and he would have been interesting to talk about, regardless of him coming up and with Correa hurting his hand. But yeah, I just want to highlight what he's done at AAA so far. So Royce Lewis was the first overall pick in 2017 with the Twins. Fangraphs has future value at 50 and tools. They had a 40 on his hit, 60 game power, 70 raw power, 50 on his speed, and 45 field. He had a lot of motion in his swing, and honestly, his results in the minors were very up and down. As a result, he was very inconsistent. In 2019, however, he won the AFL MVP, played 3 different positions, knocked cover off the ball, looked like he was kind of coming together. He also, his makeup and baseball IQ is supposed to be off the charts, and player that I was just really interested in and tried to acquire in our league. Was able to do that, but then he seriously hurt his knee in 2021 and was out that entire year. Just so far in AAA this year, he had posted a 322, 439, 575 slash line with over 1,000 OPS. His walk rate was 16%, and he was striking out only 18% of the time. He works out with Torrey Hunter quite a bit. They've developed a really close bond. He's worked really hard. He's put on a lot of muscle and has worked on his game. His swing is a lot quieter. He hasn't lost any of his speed. So he has a lot of tools to work with. So just really happy for him to have the opportunity to come up. Excited to see him do well in the AAA, albeit it's a very small sample. Just for context, the last full season he played in the minors, his slash line was 235, 290, 369 with a 664 OPS. So you can see clearly he was posting a lot better results so far this year, again, albeit small sample. But I think I wanted to highlight Royce because I'm just excited for him to, again, overcome that major injury and make it back to the majors and hopefully have a chance to see what he can do. And because I think it says a lot when someone comes back from all that. And then I think from a fantasy perspective, what I think is more interesting to talk about is, we've seen guys just crush AAA the last couple of years and come up and struggle, whether that's Kalinick last year, so far this year, Witt, who demolished 2 levels last year, is struggling. And it's getting to the point like that, I think, should be what we expect. I think a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, Cunha Soto came up and just took on the league by storm. And, that's not a realistic expectation. So if Royce stays up, which honestly, I don't know if he will, Correa's hand is not fractured, thank goodness. I would anticipate they're going to send him back down, but maybe I'm wrong. They were pretty clear before the call up that they were going to give him, if not a full season, most of the season in AAA, because he just had not played. But the pandemic season and his knee injury, he hasn't played. So they wanted to let him play every day, play at shortstop, and just get back in rhythm of his career. So I'd be surprised if they, because obviously shortstop belongs to Correa, and he's only played shortstop this year in AAA. So I'd be surprised, honestly, if they take him off his position at short and have him play a platoon role at the big league level. I think they'll let him go back down and keep playing, but we'll see. But I'm excited for him to come up, and I think it's an interesting study in how we treat prospects fantasy wise.
Mm-hmm. How would you deal with that with the infield in Minnesota with him coming up? Because say he knocks the cover off the ball and you don't want to send him down. Are you putting Lewis at third and Miranda at second? Are you putting Lewis at second and Miranda at third? Like it's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
but
it is.
But I do wonder what they'll do if all those players are playing well.
Yeah, I mean, that's my thought, I guess, is Polanco plays second, Miranda goes to first, and Lewis plays third. I know in the fall league when he won the MVP that I mentioned, he played short, third, and center.
Mm-hmm.
He's not playing center in Minnesota because they have a Gold Glover there and Byron Buxton. So, yeah, third would be the place on the dirt that I could see him going, or maybe a corner outfield.
It could even think about playing one of those guys at first.
Mm-hmm.
Either
I thought Miranda would play first.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting though. He's a player. I think everyone's pretty happy to see him in the majors just because of what he's been through. Today, he hit a clutch double off the wall in right center, which you love to see out of a right-handed hitter. But it was subsequently picked off from second by your boy Christian Betancourt. So my hitter that I chose to do a deep dive is Cedric Mullins.
Okay.
I wanted to know what was going on with him this year, what went on with him last year. He's 27 years old, 13th round pick in 2015 out of Georgia. He'll be a free agent 2026. Leadoff hitter, Baltimore Orioles, playing center field this year. Last year, he hit 290, 360, 518, 91 runs, 30 home runs, 59 RBIs, 30 steals, 8.7% walk rate, which is slightly below league average, 18.5% K rate, which I believe is also slightly below league average, and a 322 BABIP. This year, he has 4 homers and 116 plate appearances and 3 steals. So what's up with Cedric Mullins? Why isn't he the player that he was last year? It's pretty, what I found is that it's pretty simple. He's swinging the bat more than he did last year. He's less selective. His walk rate is down. His K rate is up. And his launch angle is currently 20.3 degrees. And last year it was 14.8. Optimal is somewhere around 15 degrees for most hitters. And so for him, ground balls are down, fly balls are up. O swing is up 7%. Zone swing is up 8.5%. Swing percent is up 7%. So he's swinging the bat more. He's swinging for more home runs. His swinging strike rate is up 2.7% to 10.9. So he's just more aggressive. Interestingly, we see his called strike plus swinging strike rate go down. So it's down almost 2%, even though his swinging strike rate is up almost 3%. And that's because he's just not being selective enough, or being as selective as he was last year. He's still hitting the ball hard. Average exit is 71st percentile. Hard hit is 71st percentile. X slug is 71st percentile. Barrel is 76th. The speed is still there at 84th percentile, but he's just swinging at too many pitches and he's trying to hit too many home runs. He's still hitting the fastball. His average on the fastball is 264. His XBA is 305, and his slug is 472, and his XBA is 556. The difference between this year and last year from a pitch mix perspective is he's not hitting the breaking ball this year or the off speed. Whereas last year he was pretty even across the board as far as hitting off speed breaking balls and fastballs. And subsequently, he's seeing 6.7% fewer four-seam fastballs this year than he did last year. And I think that's because he's not hitting the breaking ball as well. So super interesting. I think he would be a buy low if I could get him at a decent cost in fantasy. I think teams are smart enough to look at these types of numbers and say to Cedric Mullins, like, hey, you're super fast. You hit 30 home runs last year, yes, but you're super fast. Hit the ball on the ground a little bit more. Don't swing for home runs so much. You're our leadoff hitter, not our 3 or 4 hitter.
Right.
Let's try to put together a season like you did last year. Your point's to get on base. And if you happen to run into one, that's great. So his steals are down too, because his walk rate is down, right? But again, I don't think it's a skills question. I think it's just the fact that he's kind of shifted what he's trying to do.
Yeah, it seems like a mindset shift. Like he's trying to back up what he did last year.
Absolutely. Which again, if you can get him to tweak back to the type of swing that he had last year, I think that those statistics are achievable. So I guess my takeaway from my deep dive into Mullins is that he's probably pressing a little bit to try to, as you said, kind of achieve what he did last year. And he's trying to hit home runs, and he just needs to go back to being a leadoff hitter. Like, go be a leadoff hitter, hit the ball on the ground sometimes, shorten your swing up with 2 strikes, go steal some bags. And before you know it, you're back to 25-25 or 30-30, because he's certainly hitting the ball hard when he hits it.
Yeah, I mean, he's just you highlighted it well, but he's just not being very selective. He's swinging. Not only is his chase rate up 6%, yeah, but he's swinging almost 8% more in the zone as well. He's not waiting for his pitch, and he's chasing pitchers' pitches.
Right.
And a lot of it's he's probably being pitched differently, so he just has to adjust back. But yeah, to your point, all the quality of contact skills still back up the fact that he can post those same type of results. But
he's a good player. The approach needs to go back to what it was last year a little bit. And the one thing that's a little concerning, and I'm guessing that there's some pitch recognition stuff going on, is that he's not hitting the breaking and off-speed pitches the way he did last year. So he could be that he's hunting fastball and he's not adjusting to the breaking pitches. I wish I could talk to an Orioles hitting coach to understand what it is that's going on. I wish we had access to those types of team employees, but again, I think he's a decent investment if you can get Cedric Mullins at a lower price because of his start this year. And for me, he at his, like last year, he's an outfield 1, right? 30-30, well, with the exception of the RBIs, because I think you have to make up for his lack of RBIs somewhere else. And it looks like he has the skills to achieve that same sort of season. It's just a matter, again, of him making a tweak. So do you have any other thoughts on Cedric Mullins before I move on?
This is a complete aside, but I was following on his Savant page as you were going through his profile. His sprint speed, he's 27. His sprint speed the last 5 years, it went from 95, 94, 92, 86, 84. And it just is reinforcing, when you see that is, speed and steals are kind of a young player's domain.
Yep.
And that players as they age, by and large, there are exceptions, are going to slow down and the steals are going to tick down. Just a good reminder. And again, it doesn't mean he can't still be an asset, but it was like, wow, that's really incremental year by year. His speed goes down just a little bit year by year.
Right.
And it is, again, kind of a domain of the young players. Just interesting thing.
Right. One other thing in his favor is I just looked up his hit spray chart from last year. And as we know, the Orioles moved left center back, the fences in left center back by, 25 or 30 feet, and which are making all their pitchers pitch really well. But all of his home runs were to the right of center field last year. So that movement of fences would not have impacted any of Cedric Mullins' home runs last year. I found that interesting. I wanted to see if that had an impact on him as well. And it looks like it hasn't at all. So go buy Cedric Mullins if you can and hope that he makes the adjustment. We've had some pretty decent luck with, or at least you have, with finding players who just needed to tweak their launch angle a little bit with Yelich and Brian Hayes this year. I think that's a way to look for really talented players, or players who have a great hit tool and power, who just need to figure out what their swing looks like.
What I've learned about that is it's, yes, I mean, there's been that popularity in terms of like an uppercut swing, and players like Justin Turner or almost a JD Davis. Is that correct? Dang it. I hate when I get mentally blocked. The Red Sox cleanup here. JD Martinez. Sorry. Yeah. JD Martinez. They popularized that sort of uppercut, lift the ball But it's not necessarily about that. What I've learned is that when guys have poor launching us, they're missed time. They're off time.
Mhm.
And when guys are ahead or behind, that's when they're going to end up hitting ground balls.
Mhm.
And so it's more of a timing issue than it is or a pitch recognition issue, and they're being off time than it is like, oh, that they have a
Swing
ground
off.
ball stroke or a ground ball thing.
Right.
So anyway.
Interesting. I had a couple quick things for you. I've got about 5 minutes here. Can you tell me who finished fourth in NL MVP voting last year? Off the top of your head.
Yeah, Harper won it. I'll go with the Dodger. I'll say Trey Turner.
So Turner was fifth. Brandon Crawford was fourth.
Okay.
So the reason why I ask is I was watching a ball game today, and they were talking about Tyler O'Neill finished ninth in NL MVP voting last year. And I was like, that's so random. Like, I would have never thought that. And so I wanted to
I didn't even know they went down that far.
Right. I wanted to see who the top 10 were.
Okay.
Austin Riley was eighth.
Okay.
Goldschmidt seventh. Turner sixth. Freeman was 10th. O'Neill, Riley, Goldschmidt, Turner, Crawford fourth, Tatis third, Soto, and Harper. But to see Austin Riley and Tyler O'Neill in the top 10 in MVP voting was just very foreign to me. So I looked up the AL as well. We know Ohtani won, and Guerrero was second. Do you know who was third? Obviously, it's like some rando because I'm asking.
Yeah. I would go with a White Sox or a Blue Jay. Say George Springer.
Marcus Semien.
Dang it. See, I was close
third.
on.
You were on the right track, but Marcus Semien was third in MVP voting, which to me is just crazy. 10th was Brandon Lau, and 9th was Cedric Mullins, and those were the ones that were really interesting to me. Correa was fifth, and I don't know how justified that is. I guess part of it is his defensive WAR, but anyway.
Yeah, his WAR last year was crazy.
I just found it very interesting to look up some of the randoms that finished top 10. Anything you're excited for the upcoming, I guess this weekend and then leading into early next week?
Well, I'm excited. We have like 14 double headers tomorrow. I'm buckling down for my last night of work, and so I'll be in full baseball mode tomorrow. Taking a trip to Pittsburgh. I'll be at the game Monday night.
Yep.
So that's obviously a first time at PNC Park. First time seeing Brian Hayes live. Get to see
Ryan Reynolds too.
Yeah, get to see Mookie Betts play. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's my first real baseball trip here in Pennsylvania. It's the first time I've seen live baseball since COVID. So I'm very excited for that. So very excited for tomorrow and for Monday.
That's fun. Looks like George Kirby is starting tomorrow.
Yep.
Maybe
against the Rays. I can't wait to watch that.
So I've had rostered Kirby for a while. Obviously Mariners fan, but super duper excited about that. Excited to see J-Rod drive his average up a little bit. He's I don't know. Obviously he's my favorite player at this point, and it's just continues to take off. And speaking of, Yohan Moncada is going to return on Monday. So looking forward to that as well. Shall I open this pack of cards?
Let's do it.
Way out here. You got one too?
I do not.
So I was looking for really any cards I could find. I did not like Topps as a kid. I liked Donruss and Fleer, and if I could afford Upper Deck. But at this point in my life, I'm happy to have any kind of cards. And so I bought a number of packs of Topps 2022 Series 1 cards. I'll open a pack per episode if I can stand staring at them unopened. But this is the pack here. I love the
sound of the foil, by the way.
Right. So this is the pack here.
Okay.
I'll reveal the cards as and I don't know which ones are worth anything other than the players. I'm not really up to date.
Yeah.
But let's see if we can do this. This is great podcasting here.
Yeah, you'll have to turn off your camera blur if you want to focus in on it.
I don't know that I know how to do that.
Click on the little 3 dots up above your picture of yourself where it says mute. There's 3 dots.
Oh yeah.
You click on that, it should be able to unclick blur my background.
So this is my old draft board, so don't worry about that.
Yeah.
All right.
Check.
Card number 1. What do we got?
Tyler McGill.
That's right. The Ty Lord.
Ty Lord.
We got, it says walk off Walter. Walter who? Or walk off water. Walk off water, excuse me. My bad. RBI leaders. What do you know about that? That's nasty.
Jose Abreu.
That's
Yep.
nasty.
Jose Abreu.
Abreu, Teoscar, and Salvi.
Okay.
None of which I like. We've got strikeout leaders. Who are the top 3 strikeout leaders in the AL last year?
I almost said Gosman. He wasn't in the AL last year. AL strikeouts last year. Cease.
That's 1.
Cole.
That's 2.
Screw him. And
Easy.
Was hurt.
Easy. Mr. Robbie Ray.
Robbie Ray.
Mm-hmm. Little just newly minted extension, Kyle Freeland.
Okay. Hope he gets rocked today.
Somebody said on Twitter today that Joey Wendell looked like he was out of like the 1940s.
He kind of does.
I got no hit rocket arm, Martin Maldonado. I don't know if you remember Dodgers left fielder Candy Maldonado back in the day. Well, I guess Dodgers and Giants, I think. Hyunjin Ryu. This is just a bad pack.
Yeah, not exciting.
Nicky Lopez, who's better off as a utility infielder.
Mm-hmm.
Your boy Jared Walsh, my least favorite first baseman in baseball.
It's not a great looking card.
And one of the few times where I actually heard an interview of a player and liked him less than I did before the interview.
Oh, damn. That's no good.
He just kind of sounded like a meek 13-year-old. Nelly Cruz, probably the 21st Topps card edition of the Topps card that he's ever had. Not worth anything. Good old Sammy Long, little reliever for the Giants. Man, this is a bad pack. Your boy, Jason Hayward, a very wealthy defensive specialist, Jason Hayward. There's your guy.
Musgrove?
That's right.
Oh, man.
These cards look fancy. I don't know what this is worth, but it looks like it might be worth something. I've got a Generation Mr. Alec Bohm. So I'll go ahead and look that up afterwards. And a Stars of MLB Christian Yelich. Your boy. The thrill of opening a pack of cards is so ridiculous. This is like a random Topps pack. It's probably worth nothing. And it's like totally made my day. I love it.
I love it.
Cool.
All right, friend.
Appreciate you, man. We'll talk Tuesday.
Tyler Anderson just struck out and got out of the second inning.
Nice.
Man on second.
Right on. Hey, man, enjoy the game too on Monday.
Thank you. I'll talk to you from Pittsburgh.
All right.
Bye.